Rain poured down like punishment the night she escaped. Nora Hayes had nothing. No suitcase, no plan. Just the echo of her own heartbeat as she fled the man who'd spent years breaking her spirit piece by piece. She thought she'd found shelter when she stumbled into the Cardinal, a quiet bar glowing crimson through the storm. But the man behind the counter wasn't just offering warmth, he was offering protection, and his name was Luca Moretti. A stranger, powerful enough to end danger itself, or become it. Before we begin, if you believe that sometimes love is born from the darkest storms, make sure to subscribe. It's free and helps us share more stories from Desire Tales. The rain didn't just fall that night, it attacked. Each drop sliced against my skin like cold glass, soaking through the thin fabric of my jacket until I could feel my heartbeat echo in the chill. The streets were unfamiliar, slick with reflections of passing headlights and the ghostly shimmer of neon. It had been 3 hours since I ran. 3 hours since I left Ryan's apartment, and the life that had slowly drained me of every ounce of color I once had. My purse, my phone, the clothes on my back, that was all I managed to take when he'd finally crossed the line from control to danger. When the quiet manipulation turned into something darker. The moment I saw that flash of rage in his eyes, I knew I had to run. And so I did. Now, the November wind clawed at me as I stumbled down a street I couldn't even name. The city felt too big, too loud, too alive for the half-dead thing I'd become. My stomach twisted painfully. I hadn't eaten since morning. I needed warmth, light, a place to breathe, even just for a moment. Then, through the rain, I saw it. A neon-red cardinal glowing faintly through the downpour, its light bleeding across the puddles like spilled wine. The cardinal. A bar. Maybe my only refuge. I pushed through the heavy wooden door, and warmth wrapped around me like a living thing. Low jazz played softly beneath murmured conversations. Amber light poured over polished mahogany and leather booths that gleamed like dark honey. The scent of whiskey and cinnamon smoke filled the air. I must have looked pathetic. Dripping wet, hair plastered to my face, sneakers gray with city grime. "Can I help you?" The bartender's voice startled me. Tall, clean-cut, expression unreadable. His white shirt crisp, his sleeves rolled to the elbow, like a man who noticed everything, but said very little. "Just a drink." I managed my voice cracking. "And maybe something warm to eat?" He nodded once, gesturing toward a corner booth. "Sit there. I'll bring you something." I slid into the booth, its leather cold against my soaked jeans. My phone buzzed again, the 12th call from Ryan. I flipped it face down, trembling. Even his name on the screen made me feel caged. Moments later, the bartender returned with a steaming mug that smelled of whiskey and cinnamon. "On the house," he said simply. "You look like you need it." I wrapped my hands around the ceramic, the warmth seeping into my bones. For the first time in hours, I exhaled. Then the air shifted. It was subtle, a ripple through the room, like invisible tension pulling tight. The bartender straightened. Conversations hushed. The door opened. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from a black umbrella. Even from across the bar, I felt it. That presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who looked as if the world bent slightly around him. His suit, dark charcoal, molded perfectly to his frame, the fabric whispering of wealth and precision. He moved with quiet command, the room parting instinctively for him. When his gaze lifted and found mine, something inside me stopped. Dark eyes, assessing, calm, and impossibly steady. He looked at me as if he could see through the wet hair, the exhaustion, the fear. Just me. For a moment, the world fell away. The rain, the bar, the noise, only that gaze remained. Then, I looked down embarrassed, heart hammering. When I dared glance back, he was speaking quietly to the bartender who nodded in my direction. Heat flooded my face. Great. The rich stranger and the bartender were probably discussing the drowned stray dripping on their furniture. I reached for my jacket, ready to slip out. Leaving so soon? The voice came from behind me. Deep, smooth, faintly accented. Italian, maybe. I turned. He was standing there. The stranger. Close enough that I could smell faint traces of cedar and spice. Close enough to notice the single gold ring on his right hand. Understated, powerful, deliberate. I should go, I murmured, fumbling with my jacket. But he shook his head once. Stay, eat, warm up. It wasn't a request. He slid into the booth across from me with the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. I'm Luca Moretti. This place is mine. My breath caught. The owner. I'm Nora, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding, he said softly, then gestured. The bartender reappeared with a black throw blanket and a steaming plate of pasta. You're shivering.
Luca stood, stepped close, and with surprising gentleness draped the throw over my shoulders. His fingers brushed my collarbone, a fleeting touch that left a trail of warmth in its wake. Better? Yes, I breathed. Thank you. He smiled faintly, then sat again, studying me in silence. Eat, he said simply. Marco makes the best cacio e pepe in the city. The first bite nearly broke me. Creamy, peppery, perfect. A reminder of everything I'd forgotten food could be. I blinked back tears. You're running from something, Luca said quietly. Not a question, a statement. I froze, fork midway to my lips. I'm not someone, he corrected gently. Boyfriend? Ex, I whispered. As of tonight. Something flickered in his eyes, something cold, protective, dangerous. Did he hurt you? The question hung between us. No, I said finally. Not the way you think. And just like that, the dam inside me cracked. Luca didn't press me for answers. He didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. The way I avoided his eyes, the way my fingers shook each time my phone lit up with Ryan's name. He glanced at it once, then back at me, expression unreadable. When the screen blinked again, he reached out without asking and turned it face down. Persistent, he murmured. His voice was calm, but there was something dark beneath it, like an undercurrent you don't see until you're already swept away. She doesn't like losing control, I said softly, surprising myself by speaking out loud. He'll call all night. Luca studied me for a long moment, his gaze steady, but not invasive. Then he said something that made the air shift again. Men like that mistake control for love. The simplicity of his words cracked something deep inside me. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a victim, not as someone broken, but as someone who had survived. I swallowed hard. You don't know him. No, but I know his type. His tone carried weight, not judgment, but experience. It was the voice of a man who'd seen the ugliest sides of human nature and didn't flinch from them.
Another message flashed across the dark screen. "You think you can just leave me? You know I'll find you, Nora." Luca's jaw tightened. The warmth in his eyes cooled into steel. "You shouldn't be out there tonight," he said finally. I tensed. "I'll find a motel." He shook his head slowly. "You won't. Not like this. You're exhausted, freezing, and alone in a city that can swallow people whole." His words stung because they were true. The thought of facing that rain again made my stomach turn. Still, the idea of trusting a stranger, this stranger, felt reckless, dangerous. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "You don't even know me." For the first time, his expression softened. Not pity, but something else. "Let's call it professional courtesy," he said quietly. "I don't like men who hurt women. And I have space upstairs. Safe, private. You can stay the night." The offer hung in the air between us like a fragile promise. A dozen instincts screamed at me to say no, to grab my jacket, run, disappear into the dark. But the weight of the day pressed down on me like wet sand. And beneath his calm, I sensed something I couldn't name. Certainty, control, protection. "I can't," I whispered. "It wouldn't be right. You're not staying with me. The apartment is empty. It's used for business guests, people who need privacy. You'll have your own key." He stood then, tall, deliberate, and buttoned his jacket with quiet finality. "Finish your meal," he said. "I'll have Marco show you upstairs when you're ready." I hesitated, torn between fear and exhaustion. "Just for tonight?" I murmured finally. Luca's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. "Just for tonight," he repeated softly, though the way he said it made me suspect he didn't believe that at all. He gestured to Marco before leaving, speaking low enough that I couldn't catch the words, but I saw Marco's solemn nod and the way Luca's expression hardened. A silent exchange that told me I was now someone under his protection. As the door closed behind him, I sat in the dim light of the cardinal, wrapped in his blanket, eating his food, and wondering if I'd walked into safety or something far more complicated. Marco appeared quietly at my side. "Whenever you're ready, miss." I gathered my things, not that there was much, and followed him through a narrow hallway behind the bar. The stairs were steep, the walls painted in deep burgundy. My wet sneakers squeaked on the polished wood as we climbed. "Mr. Moretti rarely offers this space. He must think highly of you." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed silent.
I stood in the doorway, speechless. The apartment wasn't ostentatious, but every detail whispered of wealth and restraint. Dark floors, soft lighting, clean lines. A sanctuary above the storm. "Thank you," I said quietly. He gave a small nod. "Mr. Moretti insists his guests feel safe." When he left, the sound of the lock sliding into place was both comforting and unnerving. I peeled off my wet clothes, turned on the shower, and stood under the heat until my skin burned and the tears came, for everything I'd lost, for the strange, terrifying relief of being free, for the man downstairs whose name already echoed in my mind like a warning and a promise. Luca Moretti. That night, wrapped in silk pajamas and lying between sheets softer than clouds,
I fell asleep wondering what kind of man offered shelter so easily, and what price might come with it. When I woke, sunlight poured through sheer curtains like gold silk, soft and disorienting. For a few precious seconds, I forgot where I was, the scent of coffee in the air, the feel of smooth sheets against my skin. Then memory returned in fragments. The storm, the bar, the stranger with eyes like midnight, Luca Moretti. I sat up slowly, heart thudding. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. On the bedside table rested a steaming cup of coffee, and beside it, a handwritten note in elegant script. "Good morning, Nora. Join me for breakfast when you're ready. L." The words were simple, but they made my pulse skip. He was here. I slid from the bed, tightening the silk robe around me. My clothes from the night before, miraculously clean and folded, sat neatly on the dresser. Somehow, even that small detail made me uneasy. Luca Moretti didn't just help, he anticipated, he orchestrated. By the time I stepped into the hallway, the aroma of eggs, butter, and fresh espresso wrapped around me like a spell. In the kitchen, Luca stood by the stove, sleeves rolled to his forearms, sunlight catching in his dark hair. He was dressed casually this time, no suit, just a crisp white shirt and black trousers. Yet somehow he looked even more powerful without the armor. "You're awake," he said, without turning, his tone calm but certain. "Did you sleep well?" "I did, thank you," I replied, hovering awkwardly near the doorway. "Sit," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a faint smile. "Coffee's fresh." I obeyed, more out of instinct than decision, sliding into a seat at the marble counter. 2 cups sat ready, steam curling upward in thin wisps. He moved with an ease that made everything around him seem deliberate, measured. "You didn't expect me to be here," I said softly. "I wanted to make sure you were comfortable." He plated something that smelled incredible, a golden frittata flecked with herbs, and set it before me. "My mother's recipe," he added. "Try it." The first bite melted in my mouth, rich, savory, perfect. "It's delicious." He smiled faintly. "I'm glad." We ate in silence for a moment, the clink of silverware the only sound between us. But I could feel his gaze, not predatory, not possessive, simply aware, like he was studying the way I breathed, the way I hesitated before each word. Finally, he spoke. "Your ex, Ryan, isn't he?" The fork froze halfway to my lips. "How did you—" "Your phone," he said simply. "It lit up last night. Repeatedly." I lowered the fork, shame prickling at the back of my neck. "He's not good at letting go." "He hurt you," Luca said. It wasn't a question. "Not in ways that leave bruises, but yes, he hurt me." Luca's jaw tightened. The warmth in his expression dimmed, replaced with something colder, something I'd seen flicker in his eyes before, the kind of rage that doesn't explode, it calculates. I tried to change the subject. "You own the Cardinal." "One of several businesses," he replied, his tone casual but clipped. "It's where I come to think, to forget the noise." "And to rescue stray women in the rain?" I offered weakly. That earned me the smallest smile, sharp, dangerous, but real. "Only the ones who don't know they need rescuing." The words sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. I looked down at my plate, unsure what to say. The silence that followed was strangely intimate, not heavy, just alive. After a while, Luca leaned back, studying me again. "You left with nothing, didn't you?" I hesitated. "A few things, my mother's pendant, my phone, $70 in cash." "Nowhere to go?" "Not really." He nodded once as if confirming what he already knew. Then softly, "Then you'll stay here, for now." I blinked. "I can't stay here." "You can," he said evenly, pouring another cup of coffee, "and you will, until I know you're safe." The certainty in his tone made my pulse quicken. He didn't sound controlling, just absolute, like safety wasn't a request, but a decree. "Luca, I can't just live off your kindness," I insisted. "I'm not offering kindness, Luca. I'm offering protection." The word sent a tremor through me. Protection. After years of walking on eggshells, it sounded intoxicating and terrifying.
"Why?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. "Why go out of your way from me?" He paused. The silence stretched long enough for me to hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then, quietly, "Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save." His eyes softened, but his voice didn't. It stayed grounded, steady, deep. The voice of a man used to giving orders, not explanations. Something inside me shifted. For the first time since the night began, I didn't feel like a lost stranger in his world. I felt like part of a story I didn't yet understand. "Eat," he said gently, breaking the spell. "Then rest. You'll need it." I nodded, too tired to argue, too conflicted to refuse. As he stood to leave, he brushed his fingertips across the back of my hand. Barely a touch, but enough to set my skin on fire. "You're safe here," he murmured. "No one will hurt you again, not while I'm here." And somehow, even though I'd known him less than a day, I believed him. The days that followed blurred together, quiet, warm, and strangely unreal. I'd gone from running barefoot through the rain to living in an apartment lined with marble and soft light, where every need was silently met before I could name it. Clothes appeared in my size, meals arrived on time. The air always smelled faintly of cedar and spice. His scent. Luca came and went like a phantom, never unannounced, never hurried. When he entered a room, the air shifted, as though the world itself took a breath. On the second evening, I was curled on the window seat, a book in my lap but unread, when the door opened. Luca stepped in, dressed again in that sharp darkness that clung to him like a second skin. Suit tailored to perfection, expression calm but watchful. "You look better," he said, setting a bottle of wine on the table. "More yourself." I smiled faintly. "I'm not sure I remember who that is." He poured 2 glasses, the deep red glinting in the low light. "Then maybe it's time to find out." When he sat beside me, the couch shrank. He wasn't close enough to touch, but his presence pressed against the air like gravity. "You've been quiet," he observed. "Thinking?" "I'm trying to," I admitted. "Everything happened so fast. I don't even know what comes next." "Next," he said, handing me a glass, "is peace, for once." We drank in silence for a while. Outside, the city glowed, reflections of headlights scattered across wet pavement like broken stars. It should have felt lonely, but it didn't, not with him there. After a while, I spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Ryan won't stop. He'll come for me. He always does." Luca's gaze flickered toward me, sharp and unreadable. "He won't," he said. The certainty in his tone was almost frightening. "You can't know that." "I can," he replied evenly, "because I've already taken care of it." The words hung between us, heavy with implications I wasn't sure I wanted to unpack. "What does that mean?" I asked slowly. Luca leaned back,
swirling the wine in his glass. "It means that men like Ryan don't understand reason. They only understand consequence." Something cold unfurled in my stomach. "Luca, what did you do?" "Nothing you need to lose sleep over," he said quietly, meeting my eyes. "He's alive. But he now understands that if he comes near you again, there will be pain." I stared at him, trying to read the truth beneath his composure. "You threatened him." "I warned him. There's a difference." I wanted to protest, to say it wasn't right, but my voice caught in my throat. Because beneath the fear, there was something else, something shameful. Relief. "Why would you do that for me? You barely know me." Luca set his glass down. "Because I don't need to know you to know he doesn't deserve you." His words shouldn't have meant so much, but they did. I felt my chest tighten, an ache I hadn't expected. He rose, crossing to the window, the city's light carving lines of gold across his profile. "You're still afraid," he said, without turning. "Of him, of me, of what comes next." "I'm not afraid of you," I lied. He glanced back, a ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. "You should be." The honesty of it made me shiver. He returned to the couch, closer this time, close enough that his knee brushed mine. "Nora," he said softly, "I don't play games. Not with business. Not with people. When I say you're safe here, I mean it." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to, but safety had always come with a price in my life. "What kind of business are you in, Luca? The cardinal, the staff, the way they treat you. It's not just a bar, is it?" He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with quiet precision, he said, "I own several enterprises in this city, some legitimate, some that operate differently." "Differently?" He exhaled slowly, his gaze locked on mine. "You're not the first to ask, and most people who do wish they hadn't." My throat went dry. "Are you telling me you're dangerous?" He smiled faintly. "Not denial, not confirmation. I'm telling you that I protect what's mine."
"I'm not yours," I whispered. Luca leaned forward slightly, his eyes dark as shadow. "No," he said, "not yet." The words hit harder than I expected, not a threat, but a promise. We sat there for a long moment, locked in silence that felt more intimate than touch. I couldn't look away. And in his gaze, I saw everything I feared and everything I couldn't resist. That night, as he left, he paused at the door. "Sleep well, Nora," he said quietly. "You're safe here, even from yourself." And then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in that perfect apartment, surrounded by warmth, haunted by shadows, and knowing deep down that I had just stepped into a world I didn't yet understand. Morning came, soft and deceptive. The sky over the city was painted in pale gold, the kind of light that pretends everything is peaceful. But peace, I was learning, was an illusion. When I walked into the kitchen, Luca was already there, immaculate as always, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up. He looked up from a folder spread across the counter. His gaze met mine, steady and unreadable. "Good morning," he said. "Coffee's ready." I tried to smile, but the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. "What's wrong?" I asked carefully. He gestured to the folder. "Information. About your ex, Ryan Cole." My stomach clenched.
Why would you? Because knowledge keeps you safe, and I don't like surprises. I hesitated, then crossed the kitchen. Inside the folder were photographs, candid shots of Ryan outside his office, in his car, on the phone, documents, reports, notes scrawled in precise handwriting. My pulse quickened. You had him followed. I had him investigated. He corrected, calm but firm. He's not just controlling, Nora. He's dangerous. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look. Among the papers were police reports, 2 complaints from previous girlfriends, both withdrawn before they reached court. He's done this before, Lucas said quietly. Different names, same pattern. Isolation, control, emotional dependency. And when they tried to leave, he let the sentence trail off, but the implication was clear. My knees weakened. I gripped the counter for balance. I didn't know that. I thought he only did that to me. Luca's expression softened slightly. Abusers don't change their nature. They just change their victims. He flipped to another page. Bank statements, coded transactions, late-night transfers between accounts. He's in debt, gambling, and he's been moving company funds to cover his losses. I shook my head in disbelief. He worked for an investment firm. He said he was saving for our future. He was stealing to fund his own, Lucas said evenly. And when you confronted him about anything, he made you doubt yourself. The words hit like a physical blow. Every gaslight, every cruel apology, every manipulation replayed in my head until I felt sick. I sat down heavily on the nearest chair. I was so stupid. Luca moved closer, not touching, but near enough that I felt the steadiness of his presence. Don't say that, he said quietly. You survived him. That's not stupidity. That's strength. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. I didn't want to cry in front of him, not when he looked at me with that unshakable calm, not when I could feel my walls beginning to crack. What happens now? I asked. Now, he said, closing the folder, we make sure he never hurts you again. His tone was final, as if the decision had already been made. But it wasn't just his authority that unsettled me. It was how natural it sounded coming from him. Luca Moretti didn't ask for permission to protect someone. He simply did it. I don't want anyone hurt, I said softly. I just want to disappear, to start over. Luca's gaze darkened. You can start over, but you can't run forever. Sooner or later, a man like Ryan will find a way to twist the story. He'll paint you as unstable, desperate. He's already started doing that. What? He slid a phone across the counter. A secured device, not mine. On the screen was a message forwarded from one of his men. Ryan had called hospitals, police stations, even shelters, claiming his mentally unstable girlfriend had gone missing. I stared at the words until they blurred. He's trying to make me sound crazy, I whispered. He's preparing a narrative. So if you come forward, if anyone finds you, you'll be the problem, not him. The walls seemed to tilt around me. He can't just do that. With the right money and influence, he can, Luca said quietly. And Ryan has both. I looked up at him then, at the man who had stepped out of the rain like a myth and somehow become the only solid thing in my fractured world. So what do I do? He stepped closer. You let me handle it. There was no hesitation in his voice, no doubt, just quiet certainty. And even though I didn't understand how or what it might cost, part of me, the part that had lived in fear for years, wanted to believe him.
Who are you, really? I asked finally. You're not just a bar owner." Luca's lips curved into a half smile, dark, unreadable. "No," he admitted. "I'm not." He reached out, brushing his thumb lightly across my cheek, a gesture that felt both tender and possessive. "I have resources, Nora, connections, the kind that make problems disappear." The words should have terrified me, but they didn't. Instead, I felt the strangest calm, as if for the first time the world wasn't entirely against me. "Don't look at me like that," he murmured. "I'm not a saint." "I never thought you were, but I think you're the first person who's actually on my side." Luca's eyes softened, a flicker of emotion so brief I might have imagined it. "Then let me prove it." He turned to the folder, snapped it shut, and handed it to a man who had appeared silently in the doorway. Older, gray at the temples, posture alert. "This is Joseph, head of security. He'll take care of the details." "Sir," he said with a small nod. "Ryan Cole. I want everything. His debtors, his contacts, his pressure points, and find out who he's talking to on the council." "Already on it," Joseph replied, leaving as quietly as he came. I stared at the closed door, heart racing. "Council?" Luca leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Your ex isn't stupid. He's reaching out to someone with influence. Maybe a cousin on the city board, maybe a friend in law enforcement. It doesn't matter. It won't save him." There it was again, that shadow in his voice, power wrapped in silk, control disguised as calm. "You sound like a man who's used to getting what he wants," I said carefully. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. "When you've built your world from nothing, you learn not to ask. You take." Our eyes met. For a long, dangerous moment, I didn't see the man who'd made me breakfast or draped a blanket over my shoulders. I saw the truth. The power beneath the gentleness, the ruthlessness beneath the charm. And still, I couldn't look away. "Rest, Nora. You've been through enough," he said softly. I nodded, unable to find words. As I turned to leave, he said quietly behind me, a promise and a warning all at once. "Whatever happens next, you don't need to know the details." But deep down, I already understood. Whatever Luca Moretti was, he wasn't just a savior. He was a man who moved the world by invisible strings, and for reasons I couldn't yet name, he'd just chosen to move it for me. Three days passed. 3 long, silent days inside the gilded cage above the cardinal, where luxury and safety came wrapped in the faint hum of danger. I spent most of the time by the window, watching the rain ease into sunshine, wondering how a person could feel both free and trapped at once. Luca came and went without explanation. Every time he entered, the atmosphere changed, heavier, warmer. He'd ask if I had eaten, if I was sleeping, if I needed anything, and every time I wanted to ask what he needed. But I didn't, because the truth frightened me. The third evening, the door opened again, not with his usual quiet grace, but urgency. He stepped inside, removing his jacket, and I noticed a faint bruise along his jaw. His tie was loosened, shirt slightly wrinkled. For the first time, he looked human. "What happened?" I asked, standing. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. "It's handled." He crossed the room and poured himself a glass of whiskey, his movements deliberate. The ice clinked softly against crystal. "Was it Ryan?" I whispered. Luca didn't answer right away. He turned the glass slowly in his hand, watching the light catch on amber liquor. "He won't be a problem anymore." My stomach dropped. "Luca,
What does that mean? He met my eyes, calm and unflinching. It means you can stop looking over your shoulder. Tell me he's alive, I demanded. He's alive, Luca said evenly. But he understands now that pursuing you would be unwise. Relief came first, sharp, immediate. Then guilt, dark and heavy. I sat down slowly. You shouldn't have done that. I protect what's mine. You're not mine, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He stepped closer, his gaze steady and unyielding. Not yet, he murmured. The words lodged in my chest like a heartbeat I couldn't silence. He wasn't threatening me. He was promising me something. Something I wasn't sure I wanted, but couldn't deny I felt drawn towards. You don't even know me, I said softly.
He smiled faintly, setting the glass down and kneeling beside me. I know you better than you think. I know you hate silence when you're anxious. I know you tap your thumb against your cup when you're thinking. I know that when you lie, your voice trembles just a little. My throat tightened. You've been watching me. I notice things, he corrected. That's how I've survived in my world. And since the moment you walked into my bar, I've noticed you. He reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. His touch was feather light, but the air between us grew heavy. You're not like the people around me, Nora. You don't want power or money or favors. You just want to breathe. Tears welled in my eyes before I could stop them. You make it sound so simple. It can be, he said, quietly, if you let it. I wanted to tell him he didn't understand, that life with a man like him could never be simple, but the words wouldn't come. He stood, straightening his sleeves with that effortless composure. You can leave if you want, no one will stop you, but if you stay... He paused, his gaze holding mine, dark, magnetic, impossible to look away from. If you stay, you'll never have to run again, not from him, not from anyone. The promise was intoxicating and terrifying. Safety, control, power, all wrapped in the warmth of a man who could end storms with a phone call. I took a shaky breath. And what would it mean to stay? His answer was immediate. It means you'd be under my protection, my world, my rules. I exhaled, half a laugh, half a sob. That sounds like another cage. Luca's expression softened, not anger, but understanding. Maybe, but it's a cage with the door unlocked. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing his words replay in my head. If you stay, you'll never have to run again. By dawn, I knew I couldn't go back to the life I'd escaped, but stepping fully into Luca's world meant giving up a piece of myself. When morning came, I found him in the kitchen again, pouring coffee like nothing had changed. I've made my choice, I said. He turned, eyes steady. And I'll stay. For the first time since I met him, Luca Moretti smiled. Not a calculated expression, not a smirk, but something rare, real, good, he said softly. You won't regret it. He stepped closer, fingertips brushing mine as he handed me a cup of coffee. His voice dropped low, velvet over steel. But understand something, Nora. In my world, safety and danger live side by side. And now, whether you like it or not, you belong to both. It should have been over.
Ryan should have vanished into the blur of bad memories, into the long list of things I would never have to fear again. But monsters don't die that easily. They reinvent themselves. It began with a phone call. Not from him, but from Joseph, the quiet man Luca called his head of security. Luca was pacing when I entered the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, jaw tight. "When?" he said sharply. A pause. "Keep him under surveillance. Don't engage until I say so." He hung up and turned to me, the calm in his expression gone. "Ryan was seen near the Cardinal last night. He's asking questions about you." My pulse spiked. "I thought you said—" "He did," he interrupted softly, "but some men don't learn from warnings." The chill in his voice sent shivers down my spine. "What is he doing?" "Spreading lies," Luca said. "Telling anyone who listened that you're being held against your will. He's already gone to the police and to a man named Harrington on the city council, his cousin." I sank onto the couch, my body trembling. "You've tried to make it sound like you kidnapped me." Luca's eyes darkened. "He's playing with fire." I looked up at him. "You can't hurt him again." He turned toward me slowly. "I don't hurt people without reason, Nora. I remove problems, and Ryan is becoming one." I stood, anger and fear swirling inside me. "That's not your decision to make." For a heartbeat, silence. Then, in a tone as quiet as thunder before the strike, he said, "When a threat enters my world, it becomes my decision." I saw then, not the man who'd made me breakfast, but the one the city feared. The one who could end a man's existence with a single phone call. "Luca, please," I said, voice trembling, "you can't hurt him again." He studied me, expression unreadable. Then he nodded once. "No violence," he said at last. "I'll find another way." He poured himself a drink, his movements slow, precise. "Information is power. You once told me Ryan worked in finance." "Yes," I whispered. "Brookfield Investments." "And you said he moved money between accounts late at night? You remember the amounts?" I frowned, searching my memory. "Always just under 10,000. Repeated transfers. Why?" Luca's mouth curved. Not in amusement, but satisfaction. "Because that's the exact limit banks stop reporting. He's laundering." He set his glass down. "We'll expose him. Quietly." I should have been horrified by how easily he shifted from tenderness to strategy, but I wasn't. I was fascinated. That night he made several calls in Italian, calm, fluid, the cadence of command. Each conversation ended the same way, with obedience. When he finally hung up, I asked softly, "Who were you speaking to?" He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "People who owe me favors. Tomorrow, Ryan Cole will have bigger problems than finding you." I wanted to believe that meant justice, not retribution, but deep down, I knew in Luca's world, those words were the same thing. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Luca's voice again, lower, sharper. He stood near the window, phone in hand, speaking to Joseph. "Make sure the documents are real. I want his company to turn on him before noon." When he noticed me watching, his voice softened instantly. "Go back to sleep, cara mia." I sat up, wrapping the silk sheet around me. "You've been up all night, haven't you?" He didn't answer, just set the phone aside and came to sit at the edge of the bed. His eyes, dark and unreadable, searched mine. "He's desperate," he said quietly. "He's trying to survive by destroying you. But that ends today. What are you going to do? He hesitated, brushing his fingers lightly over my hand. I'm not going to do anything. But some truths have a way of finding their way into the right hands, especially when those truths involve stolen money and harassment complaints. I stared at him. You're exposing him. Exposing, Luca repeated, his lips curling faintly. Such a polite word. A knock interrupted us. Joseph entered, his tone brisk but deferential. Sir, it's done. The files have reached Brookfield's compliance department, and Councilman Harrington has been reminded of his own financial irregularities. Good, Luca said quietly. That should buy us peace. Joseph nodded and left as silently as he came. I turned to Luca, heart pounding. You ruin people for a living, don't you? He looked at me for a long moment, not angry, not defensive, just honest. I protect the people I care about. Sometimes that ruins others. The simplicity of his words made them more dangerous, because I realized then that Luca Moretti's love wasn't gentle. It was a force, one that built walls, moved mountains, silenced enemies. And I was standing in the center of it. By evening, the world shifted again. Luca returned from a meeting, his suit immaculate, his expression composed but taut. It's done, he said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. Ryan's been suspended from his job pending investigation. His accounts are frozen. The councilman has withdrawn his complaint. He won't bother you again. I took the glass, hands trembling. You ended him. He met my gaze evenly. No, Kata, I just let his own sins destroy him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city lights glimmered through the rain, and I thought about how far I'd come, from running barefoot through the storm to standing in a man's arms who commanded the darkness like a weapon. I whispered, What happens now? He set his glass down and stepped closer, his hand cupping my face with devastating gentleness. Now, he said, you stop running. You start living. His lips brushed mine, soft, certain, and in that moment, I knew the truth. The storm hadn't passed. It had simply changed its shape. And its name was Luca Moretti. A week passed before the world began to fall apart again. Not with violence this time, but with whispers. It started when I saw Luca on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian, his tone sharp, dangerous. His control, usually so effortless, cracked just enough for me to see the storm beneath. When he turned and saw me standing in the doorway, he ended the call instantly. Is it Ryan? I asked. No, he said. It's something else. But I could see it in his eyes. It was Ryan, or rather the mess he'd left behind. Later that night, Joseph came. His expression was grave, voice low. The authorities are looking into the Brookfield collapse, sir. They've connected some of the leaks to your contacts. Someone traced the anonymous tips back to our end. His expression didn't change, but I saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. Who knows? Enough to make things complicated. He dismissed Joseph with a nod, then turned to me. You've been quiet, he said. I'm just trying to understand the world I've walked into. Every time I think I see the whole picture, the frame gets bigger. Luca poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to me, and said softly, In my world, truth isn't black and white. It's a weapon, one that cuts both ways. He sat beside me, the faint scent of sandalwood clinging to him. "Do you regret it, staying?"
I looked at him, this man who'd burned cities for me without ever raising his voice. "I don't know," I admitted. "You saved me, Luca. But you also built another cage, only this time I walked in willingly." His expression softened. Sorrow, maybe, or something close to it. "You think I wanted that?" "I think you don't know how to love without control," I said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, without warning, he laughed, low, tired, almost broken. "Maybe you're right." He stood, walking toward the window, the city lights painting him in fractured gold. "Power teaches you strange things, Nora. You start to believe you can fix everything, even the people you care about." "I never asked you to fix me." He turned then, eyes dark with something fierce and painful. And yet I did. The next morning, the headlines hit. "Investment scandal rocks Brookfield. Insider sources point to organized connections." Ryan's name was everywhere. So was Luca's. Reporters called the Cardinal a front. Anonymous sources whispered about the Moretti network, the empire beneath the city. Suddenly, the man who had seemed untouchable was being watched from every direction. That night, Luca came home late. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes were tired. He poured a drink and said, "We have to leave for a while. Italy, maybe. The noise will pass." "And if it doesn't?" I asked. He hesitated, then met my gaze. "Then I make it pass." My heart clenched. "I can't lose you, Luca. You can't control everything, every threat, every problem, every part of me." He set the glass down, his voice quiet but sharp. "I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you." "I know," I whispered. "But what happens when I stop needing protection?" He froze, like the question had struck deeper than I intended. Then, softly, he said, "Then I'll have to learn who I am without it." 2 days later, the reckoning came. I woke to the sound of raised voices in the living room. Joseph was there again, pale, tense. "They have a warrant," he said. "Financial crimes, smuggling, extortion. They're moving fast." Luca's response was calm, almost eerily so. "Delay them. Move the accounts. Send the others to the southern safe house." "And you?" Joseph asked. Luca's eyes flicked toward the bedroom door, toward me. "I'm staying here." I stepped out before he could stop me. "No, you can't stay. You said yourself they're coming." He smiled faintly. "Let them. I've lived a long time making deals in the dark. Maybe it's time the world sees what I've built." Tears burned my eyes. "This isn't noble, Luca. It's suicide." He crossed the room in 2 steps and took my face in his hands. "No, cara mia, it's choice. The one thing they can't take from me." "I can't lose you," I whispered. "You won't, really." His lips brushed mine, soft, final, infinite. And then he was gone. They came at dawn. Sirens, flashing lights, voices shouting down the marble hallways. When the door burst open, I stood still, wrapped in one of his shirts, the scent of him clinging to me like a ghost. They didn't find him. Luca Moretti, the man the city feared and whispered about, had vanished before the sun rose. All they left behind was silence. And me. Weeks later, I found a letter under the floorboard of the bedroom, sealed in black wax, my name written in his bold, slanted script. "Nora,
If you're reading this, it means I'm where I need to be. Out of reach for now. Don't look for me. You deserve more than a life lived in the shadows I built. The key enclosed opens a house on Lake Como. It's yours, legally and quietly. A sanctuary, the kind I could never give you here. You once said I didn't know how to love without control. Maybe this is how I learn. L. The key was warm in my hand, though I didn't know why. Maybe because it felt like the last thing connecting us. Proof that he was real, that what we had existed somewhere between danger and devotion. I moved to Italy a month later. Sometimes on quiet mornings, I stand by the lake and watch the mist roll over the water. I think of him, the man who'd turned chaos into protection, fear into desire, danger into love. And even now, when the wind shifts, I swear I can still smell cedar and spice, faint and familiar. Because men like Luca Moretti don't disappear. They just become the shadows that follow you forever. And sometimes, if you're lucky, those shadows feel like home. Plus, my favorite part was when Nora finally understood that love and freedom can exist in the same heart if you're brave enough to choose both. What was your favorite moment of justice in her story? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories from Desire Tales. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. My favorite part was when Arya looked into Dante's eyes and said, "I'm staying," proving she wasn't just brave, she was choosing love, even when it came wrapped in danger. What was your favorite moment of truth in her story? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories of love, fate, and redemption. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload from Desire Tales.